Welcome to the Ask Coach Mac podcast, where coaches from around the world get their strength and conditioning questions answered.
What's up, guys? Rob McKeefery here, and welcome to episode number 4 of Ask Coach Mac. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have a great question for Brooks, but before we get to that, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Iron Grip. If you're in the market for plates and dumbbells, these are my go-to guys. I've put Iron Grip plates and dumbbells in 3 facilities, including my own garage, where my family and I work out. I have nothing but positive experience with them and love the fact that they're manufactured in the U.S. To learn more, go to www.irongrip.com or call 800-664-4766. All right, here's today's question for Brooks.
Hi, Coach. This is Brooks Barron, owner of MVP and Team Sports Performance. I've got a few questions for you. I am considering starting a podcast and got a few personal questions on how to get started with that. I want to try to help coaches that don't have full-time strength and conditioning coaching staffs, and that's what's my passion is about. Small universities, high school, middle school coaches that are doing other full-time jobs and they don't have the time to spend on strength and conditioning. So that's where my passion is. And I've just got some questions on, how would I get started? Do you recommend something like this? And thanks. Hope to hear from you.
Brooks, thanks for this question. I actually get asked this question quite often, and so I'm glad I get a chance to answer it. And I appreciate the fact that you're wanting to give back to the community in this way. And so I would first say that that's the first step is you can't start a podcast and expect it to have any kind of success if you don't have a sincere passion just to do it for free, want to give back, have a giver's heart that way, because the reality is there's a lot of podcasts that start each and every day, but most podcasts only go up to about 10 episodes, and that's the end of it. And they lose their passion for it. It becomes a job. It becomes cumbersome for them, and because of maybe some ulterior motives, it typically goes away. But sounds like you have a sincere heart for this, and I commend that. Iron Game Chalk Talk was started much the same way. When I was let go from the University of Tennessee, I was traveling around, meeting with coaches, and honestly just got very expensive. And so I started Skyping people, and thought it was a great platform and just a great way to connect with coaches. And one of my assistants came over, and we were talking to a coach. I was talking to a coach on the Skype that we both knew, and he sat down and just sat back and enjoyed the conversation. And when we ended up closing it out, he said, "This is awesome. This is like a chalk talk." And the idea was kind of born and started off just as a way for me to record those conversations, and I would throw it up on YouTube. And actually, by a suggestion by Mike Boyle, ended up setting it up to be a podcast through iTunes, and the rest is history. And so there's a couple steps and just different things that you're going to want to do. One is you want to identify who your demographic is specifically. It's called your avatar. Who do you want the podcast to reach, and be as specific as possible. I want it to be a high school coach, a middle school coach, and you did that in your question. I think really kind of narrowing it down to coaches that don't have strength coaches, that this is not their full-time job. I think is a great start. But having that clearly defined will help kind of generate the direction you want to go. The second step is you want to identify what type of podcast you want to do. Do you want to do a Q&A? Do you want to do a interview-based podcast? Do you want to do simply just a solo podcast where you're disseminating the information? Do you want to have a co-host? All those types of things will, again, help give you some guidance and a structure that your listeners will come to be able to be comfortable with and identify with. The steps I took And basically, it's a lot easier than you think it should be. I think first you need to come up with your name. If you would like to trademark it, I think there's some value in that. Create a logo and some podcast cover art is what it's called. So that way you can have it and be able to upload that to the different podcasting platforms. And then you're going to want to identify a hosting. I use Podbean. There's Libsyn. There's some other ones as well. Podbean was just one that a friend of mine had used and recommended, and so I went with it. But when you listen to a podcast on iTunes, it's not hosted on iTunes. It's hosted somewhere else, and they just take that RSS feed and be able to access that from wherever your hosting's at. And so you're going to want hosting. That's typically going to run you anywhere from about $100 to $200 a year, and then you typically you're going to want to have some sort of landing place, a blog or something along those lines where you can put show notes or resources that you mention in the podcast in those areas, and so the one other resource I'd recommend, there's a guy named John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire. He has a product called Podcasters Paradise, and it's just a community of podcasters, resources, things along those lines. And so if you're interested in taking it to another level, that would be a good product to check out. But again, I can't say enough about the fact that you want to give back to the community. I think it all centers and starts there. Once you decide that, think of a name, think of a format, create a logo and trademark it if you like. Find some hosting, and you can get it all up and going for just a little bit of money. But it's not going to break the bank. And so, Brooks, I hope that answers your question. Would love to hear what everyone else thinks. Use the hashtag AskCoachMac4 to continue the discussion on Twitter. Brooks, thanks for your question. I want to encourage everyone else that if you have a question that you would like to potentially be featured on the show, head over to www.askcoachmac.com. There you can ask your question by hitting the record button at the bottom of the page. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. And here's a quote to finish the day by Danny Thomas. Success has nothing to do with what you gain in life or accomplish for yourself. It's what you do for others. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode of Ask Coach Mac. Bye for now.